Hello everyone, welcome back to this channel where we try to discuss all sorts of things regarding our human life and the various problems and situations we might find ourselves. Today I would like to talk about a certain topic that is somewhat sensitive to me, not in the sense that it can bother me or it triggers me, but in the sense that I don't really see a lot of people that value so much the act of being rational, of being cold-blooded. Not cold-blooded in the sense of a cold-blooded killer, but in the sense of being very clear about when we should use our brain, when we should use our intuition, and when or when not to use, or maybe I shouldn't say use, but rather to acknowledge and take into consideration our feelings and emotions. Like in other videos, I have to mention that, of course, my talk will be more or less inclined towards the mental, rational side, primarily because this is how I am, primarily because I don't really see value in emotions and in feelings, but I will not be talking from my ass, so to speak. I will not be just throwing some super subjective opinions at you. Instead, I will make abstraction of those and I will take into consideration only the objective observations that I've been able to make at all sorts of people around me, around other friends of mine, around co-workers, other friends, or colleagues of any kind, or just people in general that I was able to interact with, or that at least I have heard of being spoken by someone else. So keep in mind that my intention is to provide a clear image, or an as clear image as possible, leaving aside my personal opinions as much as possible, leaving aside my subjective views as much as possible, and putting up on the table only what can be relatively easily observed by you as well. Also, before I start talking a little bit more, please bear in mind that just how I am more inclined towards being rational, calculated, some other people, and who knows, you might be amongst these people. I don't know you, I don't know who is going to listen to this message. Other people will have a strong inclination towards being emotional and not so mental, not so logical, not so rational. Okay? So, as I am making efforts to be as close as possible to an objective truth, while you're listening to this, you will also have to do your own efforts, your own mental efforts, to leave aside your subjective affinity towards being emotional, okay? And try to see pros and cons on both sides. So, I see this thing quite a lot, especially in the self-help and self-development industry. Well, I would put industry in quotation marks because it's not an industry in the real sense of the word, or at least it shouldn't be, but anyway, including when it comes to very big names, I see this topic being talked about quite a lot, and in 99% of the cases, I see people in favor of emotions and feelings. When I say in favor of emotions and feelings, I'm talking about the fact that they consider that they are so important that you should place them at the center of your existence. That's a mistake. That's the thing that I have a problem with, and that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about. Okay? It is obviously wise to acknowledge that you have whatever emotions and feelings you're having when you're having them. I am not by any chance saying that you should try to reject them, to suppress them, okay? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about other things on a more higher level and which are more important. There's basically a discussion that has to be made between feeling and being. It's basically a choice that we have to do, all of us, especially when we are faced with problems, difficulties, unpleasant situations, situations that might have repercussions in the future, situations when we need to make a decision. Because that's really, those are the problematic cases when we need to make a decision, and our decision will have repercussions, and how we take that decision suddenly becomes important. And when we have such moments, we basically have a choice to make. Whether to lean towards feeling and be guided by feelings and emotions, or to lean towards the mind and be guided by reason, logic. And of course, this is not a binary thing. You can lean more towards one, less towards the other. And of course, there are an infinity of values in between them. Essentially, the whole problem that I would like to talk about can be simplified even further, and we can say that in general, it is a matter of feeling versus being. And now I'm kind of introducing yet another concept. This seems to be a particularly big problem in women. That women have a lot more than men. Yeah, sure, there are also emotional men, but not quite that many as emotional women. And honestly, it just puzzles me. Like, even if we make an abstraction of everything and we just think about these two more or less abstract concepts, feeling versus being, it kind of puzzles me why the majority of women seem to have a huge problem making the difference between these two. And they tend to choose to feel a lot, and in a lot more times than the times when they choose to be. And here's what I mean by that. I've spoken in a previous video about a certain woman named Teal Swan, which does a great job overall. I highly recommend her work to you. But a woman that encourages this sort of behavior, encourages this idea of putting feelings, sort of like feelings and emotions, sort of like at the top of your priority. Here's the problem that she kind of touched upon briefly in some of her videos, in one of her videos, but not enough in my opinion. There are many ways in which we can feel in a certain way, and we typically want to feel good, right? So let's focus only on that. There are many ways in which we can feel good, no matter whether we're men or women. But at the same time, that which makes us feel good is not good. It's actually toxic or bad, or best case scenario, it's irrelevant. And this is what puzzles me. How come women have such a big problem understanding the difference between feeling something and being something? A lot of women want to be loved, want to feel loved, sorry. They want to feel loved by their well, probably also by their parents, but by their partners. And they are completely oblivious to the fact that there are quite a few men who have all sorts of abilities to make them feel loved while they don't really love them. Sometimes they just downright hate them. But they have this ability of making them feel as if they are loved so that they can benefit from something from them. Okay? Just because we feel healthy in general does not necessarily mean that we are healthy. And this can be seen quite easily if you take a look at a person that has suddenly found out that he has cancer, or that he has, I don't know what kind of serious problem, in his body. And until then, he was functioning very well. He had no sensations whatsoever, or just an overall sensation of, an overall feeling of good. And there was no reason for him to believe that he is sick of something. Okay? Going back to discussing more about women, there are ways in which a man can make you as a woman feel like you are safe, like you are protected. There are quite a few men that have the ability to create an image that is very fake. The kind of image of a macho man, of a tough guy. And they can make their women feel very safe from all sorts of perspectives. However, when they are faced with an actual problem in their lives, suddenly they show their real face, and they seem to be unable to actually handle those problems. And therefore, their women are not really safe with them. They just had an illusion of safety because of the skills that those men had to, create false images, manipulate them. And I could go on forever with these examples. I hope I don't need to. There are many ways in which you could feel in a certain way, but you are not. So my question would be, why exactly would a woman want to feel instead of be? Why wouldn't a woman want to be loved instead of feel loved? Why would a woman wouldn't want to be safe instead of feel safe? Why would a woman not want to be appreciated and wanted instead of just feel appreciated and wanted? Okay? And the list goes on. So, overall, throughout my entire life, one of my best, one of my abilities, even as a small child, was the fact that I could learn pretty quickly from other people's experiences. So I didn't necessarily need to have my own. I could just take a look at someone else, see how he is, more or less, see what he's going through, see his life before and after a certain event or a certain period of time, like a relation with a woman, if we're talking about a man, or a relation with a partner, whatever. And I was able to draw conclusions. And the number of people that have ended up more or less bad or with problems, bigger or smaller, doesn't matter, because of the fact that they chose to ignore their minds, their rational side, their logical side. They chose to go with their hearts. They chose to go with their feelings and emotions. This number of people is really, really high. And there have been countless times when I was able to understand the fact that they were going to have problems. They were going to end up in pain. Not necessarily physical pain, but you know what I'm talking about. They were going to enter a state in which their lives, the quality of their lives would go down and down and down. Because it's like, I never had, and I still don't have any superpowers, any supernatural abilities of any kind. I'm just using my brain. I'm just analyzing things logically. And in countless times, I've seen that when people follow their emotions and feelings, they fail, more or less, sooner or later. There are a few cases in which they actually succeed in whatever it is that they're doing, that constitute an exception from the rule. But the general rule is that they fail. And if you think about it, there are two aspects that tell us which is more advanced, which is better, the mind or feelings and emotions. Think about the fact that if we go down in the hierarchy of creation to animals, to plants, and so on, the further you go down, the less intelligence those creatures have. Okay, so we have the highest amount of intelligence out of all the animals and plants and all sorts of things, all sorts of living creatures that are below us, right? Some animals seem to have a certain level of intelligence, others less, others almost not at all. Plants also have much smaller intelligence than animals, and so on and so forth. But a lot of animals still have quite strong feelings and emotions. And I'm willing to bet that plants also have some form of emotions. I believe there have been quite a few experiments done that have shown that plants indeed have some level of emotions. So it's not difficult to understand that in the whole process of evolution, emotions were created earlier, and the mind, the rational mind, that holds the intelligence, that was created later. And it makes perfect sense, because that shows clearly that the mind is more complex than the system that generates and handles emotions and feelings. Okay? We could look at a different perspective, and we could look at how many things the mind needs in order to function properly. The mind needs a lot of information in order to be able to come up with an answer to a question, a solution to a problem, and that's just the nature of it. but it needs so many informations, so many data that it needs to process, just like a computer processor does, because it is of a higher level, and because what it needs to do, it's much more important, and has the potential of having a much higher value than some emotions and some feelings. Think about emotions and feelings. What can you do with them? Well, pretty much nothing, actually. You can just acknowledge when you are feeling something, okay? If something or someone makes you feel scared or afraid, can you do something with that particular, I guess we could call it energy, with that particular emotion? Something similar, like how the mind can take some informations and compare them, come up with similarities and differences, how the mind can calculate mathematical calculations or logical calculations. Can you think of something like that that you can do at an emotional level? Well, no, you can't. Emotions and feelings are something way too primitive. They are okay to be acknowledged, but that's the only thing that you can do. So basically, you cannot really do anything with them. You can just acknowledge them, and that's it. Perhaps send them to your brain, send them to your mind, inform your mind that in that particular moment you have felt whatever it is that you felt, and just leave it at that. Just leave your mind, take this as an extra information so that it can potentially use it in the future. But you cannot really do anything with your emotions. You cannot put them to good use, you know? That's what I'm trying to say. You cannot use them in any way, neither your feelings nor your emotions. They are very primitive forms of informations. And obviously, there's no way we can rely on them. When we have a serious problem, when we have an emergency, when we have a very important life decision to make, we cannot rely on emotions and feelings. It's a simple matter of logic. Okay? I hope this has been clear enough by now. There is an important and huge difference between feeling something and being something. Okay? Just because a person makes us feel in a certain way does not mean that we actually are in that particular way. We have to use our brain and make the necessary checks, the necessary verifications to actually confirm that we are in that particular way. And we are not just being sold some smoke and mirrors, we are not just being manipulated, we are not just being lied and cheated. We are indeed the way that they make us feel. And this is the most important thing that everyone needs to understand, but especially women. Because again, women seem to have the biggest amount of problems around this. So, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope it was clear enough. I hope you understood my message. Leave your ideas in the comments or questions if you have. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for listening to me. I will see you soon in the next videos. Bye bye.